Hello and welcome to the Bigger, Braver Life Show. I'm your host, Angela Marie Williams. As an entrepreneur and success coach, my mission is to empower you to realize your dreams and potential through transformational experiences. The purpose of this show is to inspire your positive change by learning from a community of those paving the way to a bigger, braver life. Welcome. I'm Angela Williams. I'm a licensed clinical social worker and a success coach. I'm so excited to have our very special guest today, one of my close friends, Saffy Johnson, and I'm going to let her introduce herself.
Thank you so much, Ange, for inviting me to help you with your show today. So I define myself as a corporate social worker. And I know that that's such a new term that a lot of people aren't used to yet. And so corporate social workers work really inside corporations. They can work inside of ESGs or diversity, equity, inclusion work. However, I don't work in those spaces. I work more on strategy and other avenues with providers in managed care. I've been doing this work for about 8 to 9 years of working in the insurance world.
For folks who are listening who don't really know some of the terms like managed care, can you explain that a little bit more?
Sure. So managed care insurance. I work in behavioral health insurance. That is a lot of my bread and butter from my life. So when I say managed care, it could be Medicaid, it could be Medi-Cal, it could be your individual insurance with the Affordable Care Act. It could be your employer's insurance, all of those things combined. That's what I mean by managed care.
Saffy and I met when we entered graduate school at the University of Central Florida. So we're both alums there. And we embarked on this social work master's degree together and have been working through having fun ever since. So Saffy, tell us how you're living your bigger, braver life.
So I think to really tell how I got here to this bigger, braver life, I think I have to rewind the clock back about 5 years to 2017.
Okay.
And I think that when we look at our struggles, sometimes looking back on it, oh, that's how I ended up here. So 2017, I got hit with a layoff from a job that I loved. And at that point in time, I had just started off in managed care. I was completely crushed. And being a social worker, I was making pretty good money, especially social workers in Florida. I had the ability to really be on my own, and that was very important to me. And so when I got hit with this layoff, it was hard to figure out how to get back there, especially just with my MSW. At the time, I had a lot of people who were sitting there going, you could take a pay cut. You could take a pay cut. And it behooves me to say, I'm a woman and I'm a woman of color. And I was a woman of color who had power. And I knew if I took that pay cut, it was going to take me years to try and get back there. It was not something that a lot of people wanted to hear me say, but I knew it as a truth.
Yes.
Hands down, there were a lot of times when I was I can't do that. I was living on my own. And so for me to have to try to take a pay cut and work 2 jobs, it was just not really in the cards. Plus, at the same time, I was chairing 2 organizations at the same time. Right. So I had other responsibilities in those organizations, even though they were volunteer organizations, they still were really important to me. It was like working 3 jobs, even though I was working 1. So I really was having problems trying to figure out where to go. And I ended up talking to an MBA program. And so I sat down, had conversations with them. I still remember it to this day, sitting on a couch, talking to them about, which is weird because, I'm a social worker. I'm sitting there on a couch talking to them about my problems with trying to get back into managed care, trying to get back into the insurance world, knowing my skill set, knowing what I have internally that I can really get somebody to understand, and just not seeing any fruits of my labor, even though I already had a master's degree. And I got into the program. And so that January, I started my MBA program. Also that January, I started another job at a managed care organization. I'm doing that, running a political campaign. I'm a campaign manager at the time. I'm running 2 volunteer organizations, and then my life kind of makes this major halt. Like during the first semester of this graduate program, when my mom was diagnosed with cancer, stage 4 cancer. And I realized that I had to slow down. Like it literally took me on a major pause and made me really slow down with what I was doing and being more intentional about the things that I did, which was great. It was 100% what I needed, because without this slowing down, I wouldn't be where I'm at now, where I get to towards the end of my program. They're sending me to job fairs. I'm doing everything that they tell me to do. I end up getting a 6-figure offer across the country that I ended up taking.
Mm-hmm.
And I was gearing up for graduation, spring of 2020.
Yep.
And then we have the pandemic. But I still end up moving across the country with this job, which I've been working at this big way of how I got to this whole entire different life, bigger, braver, completely not where I thought I would end my journey from going from Florida all the way back to California.
Right. And I just want to point out, you said that very smoothly as you're telling your story, but holy crap, there's a lot to unpack there, right? For those listening, Saffy's always been such an amazing force to be reckoned with, and such a hard worker, and always has hands in so many different things, and really is able to manage them very well. So a lot of strengths, a lot of that multitasking, and a lot of things that she can do really well. So I want to talk about a few things you mentioned on this journey. So you were talking about finding your way through some jobs in social work and ending up in a company, that you liked, your skill set with the managed care. So to kind of lay the land out a little bit. So when you're in social work, the cool thing, and you can speak to this too if you'd like, but I think for me, the cool thing in choosing that as a graduate program is that it's so transferable to so many different things. And so for me, I was like, oh, this looks so great. I could go into licensed clinical social work, or I can go do administration or whatever feels good for me. And I wanted that variety and those options. So do you mind actually telling us a little bit about how you found your way as you were working through some of these jobs that you had in the field?
So my first job was working with kids. I love working with kids. And sometimes it was the harder, the better, because it was just like much better rewards for me. But I also learned that for me personally, individual care gets so tiring for me. Like, it was draining. And so what ended up happening was there was an opportunity with a company, a managed care company, that fit my skill set. They were looking for people in the behavioral health world. So I ended up going there. And some of the things that we were doing there were innovative. There was research that I could do. There were programs that I could build and create. And so I did so well there that I ended up being licensed and supervising people, not just in the state of Florida, but across the nation. What ended up happening after that was I was building out programs, working on programs that ended up going nationwide for this company. And that's when, after those things, that's when my layoff happened. And afterwards, I worked for another program, and that we really didn't mesh up well. So I was back on more that behavioral health side of the coin, not so much the corporate side of the coin. Then I found my second stride. I would call that my second stride. So during my MBA program, I was working for another managed care organization, and the great thing about the work I was doing there was I was working with providers. And so when I say insurance and when I say managed care, like people kind of freeze up. And even administration, they would freeze up a little bit. Sometimes defensive conversations would happen. And so that's when the social worker skills really came to play. And I reveled in those because I felt like my job was to show you that I was the middleman and to say what I mean, to understand where you're coming from, because I am also a clinician. So I can come in and have conversations with you in a different capacity. And I loved it. And then the opportunity came to come to California. And those social work skills still transferred over.
Yes.
Because there are times when I'm asked questions as the social worker in the room with higher level people that I have to show that analytical piece and the fact of how does this impact our members? In other words, our clients.
Right. Yeah. So for those who are listening, this can, I think, apply to really any field, but especially social workers, because I think the other thing, we often talk about is that in these caring and helping professions, it's not really encouraged or promoted or the norm that we go out and make a 6-figure salary, anything like that too. So, when you are in the helping field, if you're looking for that pivot or a shift, or you're kind of finding your way and noticing your skills. So Saffy, I would say your skill set is really heavy on, like you said, the analytics, the bigger picture, being able to kind of bring people together, things of that nature. So we talk about in systems and social work, we talk about the micro, meso, macro, and really you being able to kind of be in those larger systems and really run those well versus that one-on-one interaction. So again, a cool application for social work, but regardless of where you are, those people skills or those transferable skills can be used anywhere. And it's a really awesome fit when you're, able to take what you've learned and kind of say, oh, I didn't necessarily go this traditional route of that one-on-one, but I'm using everything that I learned to bring this to the table, to advocate for other people, to be able to show you I've got both sides of the coin that I can use and speak to you from.
I did a lot of that learning through my volunteer work. So like when I was chairing things, a lot of the time I had to negotiate, like kind of negotiate the room and run meetings and run things that people wanted to say. Maybe it wasn't the right time. Maybe we had to pivot. Maybe I can see a different way of somebody taking this. Maybe we need to think about it in this capacity. Maybe we need to look at how we're presenting ourselves as an organization. So a lot of those things would run through my brain of how do we get people to move in the direction that we all need to move in, especially as an organization.
Yeah. And what a charge, because that can be really difficult for the CEO folks, for the leaders listening to this, thinking about how to take a whole organization's beliefs and move them from here to there, or their systems and move them from here to there. That can sound like a large and daunting process at times. And I think, again, that's another thing that you do really well. So let's talk a little bit too about how did you decide, what made you move in the direction of getting an MBA? Because here you are, having this master's in social work, and we put a lot of hours and time and money into that, right? So anyone who's maybe completed one of those degree programs can know that that's a lot. And then you came on to the MBA program at UF. So tell us more about how you got there.
So once again, the couch. We'll start at the couch.
Yeah, the couch.
we know that 2017 was a doozy, and we know that I was having problems trying to get to that next level and trying to really get into that higher level of management with managed care. So management and managed care. And it was hard for people to understand. I don't see what I'm getting with this candidate. Like, people were confused. They're like, she has a social work degree. She's a licensed clinician. I don't get it. And I had a lot of people who were kind of like, I don't understand where and what she's looking for because it doesn't make sense to me. She's a clinician, she should have just one skill set. And so when I got to UF, and I said to UF, this is my problem. They don't understand that I have all these other skill sets. And UF was able to really help me understand and really value my skill set a lot more. You and I talked a lot about me coming back from weekends in Gainesville and how that was for me, because I can tell you I was terrified to walk in the room. I was like,
and y'all listening, this woman completed this program on the weekends. Like this was work and then weekends were for school.
Work, well, first semester, work, campaign. I had to contact a lot of people, volunteer organization, new job. So 5 weeks in first semester of this. I don't suggest that. Yeah. I don't suggest that anymore. I don't think it's a great idea. I was terrified of walking into the room because I was like, I don't know if I fit here. You're just kind of like, you're in a new space. I'm in a new campus. I went and got my bachelor's and my MSW from UCF. So I knew UCF like the back of my hand. This is completely new. This is completely different. How do I navigate this space? We're going to have to work in groups. I don't even know if the people that I'm going to be in a group with will like me. They love me. I have to do all these other things. Oh, I have to give a presentation. That's easy. That's fine. Whatever. But wait, I have to do stuff with finance. Okay, I don't know how I feel about these things. So I was terrified to walk into the room.
Yeah.
What if they don't think like I do? What if we don't agree on things? And I can tell you during my experiences of working with my classmates that I was 100% wrong. I was 100% wrong, because there were things that they would say to me, and I was like, I'm glad that you brought up that point, and I'm glad I don't have to argue with it. I mean, have arguments, in front of each other, like in front of the whole entire class. We had an argument in front of the whole entire class once, and it was horrible and great all at the same time because we were growing.
Right.
By the end of our program, there were things that I was known for, like things that people knew my strengths were, things that I didn't even realize were my strengths, stats. Who would have thought that would have been one of my strengths, and being data and analytical in that sense, but also telling the story. There were things that we were strong as a team about. There were things that we were just all terrified, like my team and I were terrified about. And I'm just going to tell the story really quickly.
Yeah. We
had a debate with another team in our cohort, and it was all about entrepreneurship and why or why not was a good idea. And we were on the opposing side in an entrepreneurship class against a team who had a lawyer in it, and none of us are lawyers. And we knew that this lawyer was fierce. Somehow we won. But some of the things that were brought up were more of that things that you would think of on the social work spectrum of things.
Mm-hmm.
And they didn't come out of my mouth. So that's what those transformative thoughts that you kind of saw people have was probably some of the best experiences that I've seen.
Yeah. And, I think what a testament to stretching your comfort zone and going into something where, I think anytime you go into something new, our brain kind of gets a little nervous. Maybe we shut down a little bit because it's that fear of the unknown, right? Like you said, just questioning, will they accept me? Will I fit in, right? Will this be a terrible experience or a great experience? It sounds like you stretched yourself with all the opportunities you had your hands in, but also being able to be in a completely different mindset and ball game in the educational realm, right? With an MBA, that can seem pretty intimidating. Like you said, the stats and the finances and stuff. And we had this horrible joke in the social work world, like, oh, numbers, what is that? Right? We deal in people, right? I'm so proud of you for doing that. And I think, again, it speaks to, you need to go after what you want, because when you stretch yourself, that's when you get that transformational growth that's going to help you up level.
But in order for me to stretch myself in that capacity, I had to let go of some things. Point blank. There's no denying that I had a lot on my plate. And I say this in the best of intentions. Some of the things that happened that first semester probably saved me, because it forced me to stop and realize what things were really important to me. Yeah. Even though I enjoy doing all these things, is there any growth in this anymore? Right. Or have I tapped out to the highest part of my potential? And I think that's one of the biggest reasons I moved, was because I realized that there was no more growing for me there. Mm-hmm. And so I had to literally move to continue my growth in a different way.
Right, 100%. When you have these opportunities that really make you slow down, how did you realize it was time that you needed to slow down and let go of some things?
Well, I hope that nobody has to do it the way I had to do it, which was a rude awakening. I hope nobody has to go through that. But I think that when I realized my rude awakening was the one thing I couldn't control. Everything else I could juggle and control. And I threw up balls in the air and I was really good at juggling them. And it had also been brought to my attention by somebody else at the time who said, she's doing this, she's doing that those things should have been never said in that situation. And I think that was some of my rude awakening. I cannot handle all of these things. It's finally gotten to a point where I can't do all of these things, and mm-hmm. that is okay. And mm-hmm. some of these things were coming to an end anyway, which was great. Other things, people had to just understand, this is what's going on in my life, right. And I need to slow down. I need to be purposeful. Just because mm-hmm. I've been able to do these things before doesn't mean that I can do them now.
Right.
And right. So that was hard, but it was so good in the end. Be I can, I can breathe and focus on the things that I need to do for myself.
And being able to really let go of the things that didn't bring you that growth. I think that is sometimes a really hard thing for us to do. I think as, hardworking women, we want to, give and produce and do right as much as we can, because I think there's this caring heart that we have, and that we want to be able to support and do all these things. And sometimes it's for the experience and for the, building our resume or whatnot. But I do think that can be a really hard thing to do, to let go of those things that kind of are almost weighting us down and keeping us from moving forward. I know one of your values is, you really care and you show up for the people you care about. And so having your mom's diagnosis and having all of that go on, that was that time where it's your priorities were you were forced to pick those priorities and channel your energy into that.
Yeah, this was my sticking point. One of the worst things, my mom came out of surgery and people were well, what's Saffy doing? And I'm having to look at my phone, and I've got maybe 2 laptops with me. And my mom is really breathy because I said, she came out of surgery, and she goes, Saffy's running a political campaign. And you got to understand, my mom just got out of surgery, and somebody's asking her, what is Saffy doing? What's going on? And I was just oh crap, this is completely out of hand.
Right. So talk to us a little bit more about the prioritization and bringing that balance back into your life. Because again, as these busy, high achieving women, we do want to do it all, and we do want to make, space, but we also have to, again, prioritize what's going to get our attention
when we talk about prioritization. The biggest problem that we as women have is that we prioritize everything the same at all the same times. Mm-hmm. And that's not the case. That's not always the case, and that's not always the right thing to do. So volunteer organizations from 4 years ago, where I was small potatoes and rose up the ranks, it was important then, but it's not as important now because I've already outgrown them. So why, I can do better work for them if I teach somebody how to do what I did and let it grow on its own. And that's a hard lesson to learn because you still want to be attached to it. You kind of go, this is my baby and nobody's going to know my baby as well as I do. I've got this and I can manage this and I can manage that and I can manage all of these things. Not the case. You're holding back the organization. You can look at it this way. You're holding back the organization by not letting somebody else grow it in a different vision, in a different way, and maybe do a better job than you are. Mm-hmm. 2, you are letting your ego get in the way of your growth and the organization's growth. So you can look at it from both those angles, because sometimes you have to let it go. And that's really hard, but it's the right thing to do for both parties, yourself and the organization.
Yeah, and that's a really good point. And I actually had a conversation with some entrepreneurs, I think it was a couple of days ago. And, we were talking about, even like you said, no matter if it's a volunteer organization, a 9-to-5 job where you're part of a, structured company, or you are building your own company from the ground up, it's almost the same advice applies. The same thing applies to all of those. When you get to a point where you've grown it, if that's your goal and you've grown it to this point where other people need to come step in, it's almost like you've got to get out of the way so that you can let it evolve and grow, because sometimes you are the thing that's holding it back, the person that's holding it back. And, when we let our ego, take the front seat and drive, that's really not serving the bigger picture and the bigger mission of that organization. So 100% on that.
Right. And like, if something happened to you tomorrow, you're going to have to figure it out. And if you have done your due diligence, if you've done the right job, they can do it. They really can.
Right. Yeah. That's good sound advice for wherever level you are, building your own business, hiring people, managing people. Like you've got to be aware of how you're doing your job, doing it well enough, and then being able to hand that over. And when you're outgrowing it, right? And because the goal is to grow up and do something in a higher level.
Yeah.
You worked really hard to get to where you are. And you talked about getting to this point where you are now and accepting that 6-figure offer, which is so exciting, especially in the land of social work where that's not really a common situation. Can you speak a little bit more to how you define success and what encouragement you might have for others listening?
I don't think success anymore is tackling 20,000 things, not being busy just for busy's sake. Mm-hmm. When I give myself space and time to reprioritize things, I can really get the things that I want. With that being said, I also think success is a state of mind, not a destination. A lot of people are like, well, when I get this, I'm successful. Or when I have this, I'm successful. I'm like, I think if success isn't finite, it's infinite. And so when you start thinking success is infinite, you can kind of start seeing the success from the small things. So I successfully got out of bed. So for some people, that's a challenge within itself. I was able to not trip over a cat this morning because I have 2 cats. I was successful at getting that report off. I was successful at getting 2 cats across the country in a plane. I was successful at putting on makeup. Like if you keep looking at success throughout the day through those lenses, then the big successes make sense a lot better than just, I finally got that thing. Now I'm done. And it doesn't seem done. So it seems infinite.
I love that. I think I'm going to write that over here on the whiteboard. That might be the tagline here is, success is infinite. And what a mindset shift, what a perspective shift, because you're right. I think a lot of people live by when I make X amount of dollars, or when I get to the certain level in the company, or when I have X, Y, and Z thing, that's when I can relax. That's when I can celebrate or slow down or whatever. And that's not the way to live. I mean, that's the traditional normal belief, but you're right. Like we have to give ourselves that encouragement. Our brain does so much better on looking at the successes that we've had, the progress that we've already made versus the gap that comes forward from not reaching that goal. And I think that's just, you just said that so beautifully of how can we remind ourselves and celebrate all those little steps that we may take for granted and bringing in maybe even some gratitude in there too. But I think that's so, so important. I love that.
Yeah. I mean, some of those things are harder than what we think that they are.
Yeah.
I currently work from home and, I have 2 animals and they make messes. And so sometimes it's like, okay, I'm going to be at work at 8 o'clock, it's 7 something. I don't hurry up, take care of all of these things and get at work on time. Oh, wow, I was able to do that. Oh, I have one level of success. Now, what's that next thing that I can do that I'm going to really feel successful about? Oh, I got my boss that report that he's been asking. He gave me Friday. It's Wednesday. I got it to him 2 days early.
Nice.
Like that type of building off of those small successes.
Yeah, it's like you have to be your own cheerleader. If we're focusing on the negative, the draining stuff, like that's what you're going to get more of. You're going to be exhausted and then it's going to spiral, and get out of hand real quick. So you really need to be your own cheerleader. And that's what I talk to my clients about too all the time. How do we celebrate the wins? How do we look back and see where you came from to where you are now? Like that's such an important part of the journey and making progress forward. What advice would you give others who maybe other social workers or other people in fields reaching a larger goal or kind of having a different trajectory? What advice would you give them as they're looking to build their bigger, braver life?
The first thing, and this is probably the hardest part of all of this, is be brave enough to buck the trend. Because sometimes the trends get us in trouble. Like a lot of the times people will tell you, oh, you should do this, you should do that. And something either in your soul or the universe is like screaming at you, no, you need to do what I'm telling you to do, and you have to follow your soul. I'm never advocating for anybody to do anything illegal or something that hurts themselves, but sometimes you just have to buck that trend. I had a lot of family members that were like, you can't go back out there. Like, what are you thinking? And I had one person who was like, if I knew that if I didn't take the offer, she would have called them and been like, she's taking it. Yeah. So buck the trend when need be. Know that being brave is scary, but you need to push through because you've got to realize that at the other side of things, like if you turn around halfway through the journey, you are going to regret it. You're going to be like, I started this, but I was too terrified to finish this. And you just have to keep pressing. And the journey isn't about winning or losing. It's really about what you're learning. Like that's what the journey is. And a lot of people think like, if I win, then the journey was successful. Or if I lose, the journey was awful and it was a complete and utter failure. No, it's about what you're learning throughout that journey. And then I think this is the biggest part that I would leave people with. When you are on the journey and you are going through things that are causing you to be brave, you have to understand that some of those people aren't going to understand the journey. And then there's going to be those that are. And so the people that understand the journey, even if they can't see it, but they go, you know what, she's got to just power and go through this. You need to make sure that you thank them. Like that is one of my paramount things. I think about the ones that flew across the country with me, the 2 cats in a carrier, one of them crying the whole entire time. The one that cheer you on when you're speaking, believe me, he has walked past these hallways hearing me on a meeting. And then afterwards, he was like, that was great. The one that checks up on you after great tragedies in your life, calling me, hey, how are you doing today? The one that talks to me on the phone when I'm walking down the street, I called her yesterday because I wanted tacos. The uncle that shared a video with me this morning, and it talked about how you rock and you're this awesome queen. I don't tell him most of the things that I do. He didn't know that I was doing this morning, but it was something I was like, oh, this is something that I need in my pocket maybe later on. Or even the ones that call you after first weekend of like your MBA program saying, we got this. And that was you. you were the one who called me as I'm driving back home going, my head's my head's spinning. I have no clue what I'm doing. Was this a good idea? And you said, we're doing this. So you were the one who saw the whole entire MBA journey, good, bad, ugly, and even was there for graduation, which was in December.
It finally happened in person.
It finally happened. So you need those allies. And if you're going to have those allies, you got to be thankful for them. And you gotta say those things and give those flowers when you can't.
Yeah, I love that. That's all, perfectly said. I echo all of that. And the pieces of, how I work with clients in my coaching program, it's really all of what you said, but especially building that squad on the support realm, area, that squad that's going to be there for you and support you, like you said, the good, the bad, the ugly, whatever that looks like. And being able to find the people in your field that understand what you do as well. Because having friends is super amazing and they're great. But you also need somebody to speak the language of what you're going through, in those moments and have that almost like that professional reach as well. Really great point. So I think that's perfectly said. Wonderful. Thank you so much, Saffy, for being here. Tell how folks can reach you.
So I believe in, paying it forward or paying it back, right? So the best way to reach me if you have questions about corporate social work, or if you just have questions in general, like I still don't get what you did and how you did it. And I'm interested. What is this? The best way to do that is to find me on LinkedIn. You can search on LinkedIn, Saffy Johnson. I am the only one there.
You're one of a kind. You're searchable. All good.
I kind of enjoy it. But anyway, you can find me on LinkedIn and you can message me and I'm willing to talk and chat.
And when you talk about the corporate social work field, I think that's something that's kind of like a newer coined term. And so really still trying to kind of figure out what that means and, how that interacts with everything. So yeah, I'm super excited that you're open to talking with other folks who are interested and or being able to use their transferable skills. That's so important too. Thank you so much for being on today. And, we'll share Saffy's information in the show notes. You can also check the show notes for how to work with me if you're looking for a coach and you are a visionary leader, a busy CEO, and you are really looking to achieve your dreams through braver decision-making. We're going to talk about finding your squad, creating that big, brave vision and the steps to get there. And what do we need to let go of is in the way of the limiting beliefs and all the things that are holding you back. So reach out to us. Thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you soon.